The 10 and 20-minute NFL series continues, this time with the Houston Texans. Just finished up my first AFC South preview with Dan Rivera and the Indianapolis Colts. Recap of the draft, schedule, preview, etc. Check that out on my YouTube page. But now we're going to talk the Houston Texans. Let's get right into it. When last seen, they were doing a lot of things this offseason. They did not sit on their stunning reversal of form. DeMeco Ryans, what a great head coach hire. They had a tremendous draft last year with their top two picks readily contributing. Of course, CJ Stroud had an unbelievable rookie season. The Colts, we saw them sign their own players. Houston signed 14 defensive free agents. And in addition to that, they signed a few other important players on offense, such as Joe Mixon, to hopefully revitalize their run game. They were very skewed. They got most of their yardage by passing. If you look back at their stats last season, I'll rattle off some numbers for you. 3.7 yards per carry, 97 yards per game running the ball. So having a rookie quarterback rely mostly on a passing game and still being sacked 45, 46 times, it was amazing what they accomplished last season. Obviously, a great change moving on from Lovie Smith as the head coach the previous season. They had a plus 10 turnover ratio last year. They were first in special teams, not only in 2022, but also in 2023. That's back-to-back medals, gold medals with special teams, and absolutely special teams play matters. So the key issues this year is how would they handle success? So let's get right in. Let's talk about their draft. And their draft started with pick 42. Remember, they did have a first round draft pick, but they chose to trade with the Minnesota Vikings. They moved down from pick 23 to 42. Personally, I didn't see the need in doing that, and it cost them a couple of higher rated cornerbacks. It also cost them a couple of higher rated offensive linemen. But that's water under the bridge. They did that. So let's go with what they had. At 42, they pick Kamari Lassiter. On my ranking, I'm looking at mine, he was my 8th rated cornerback. So basically, he had a grade in the 50 to 60 range, a little bit overdrafted, in my opinion. If he had more speed, he would have been in the top 3 conversation at cornerback. He has excellent instinctive abilities. He doesn't have the requisite cornerback speed that you need in today's football game. There's a lot of things he does well. The fact that he's my 8th rated cornerback and a second round prospect means that he's a very good player, but he's not going to be able to cover the full field. So basically, I think they could have done a little bit better at cornerback. They have some other players already on the roster at cornerback, but as we know, many of them have not been able to stay healthy. My top need was offensive linemen. And again, once they moved back from 23 to 42, they weren't going to get one of the top 8 first round rated offensive linemen. So they went after Blake Fisher, who's primarily an offensive tackle, had a third round grade on my board. Pick 59 is near the end of the second round. So again, we're not that far off in terms of what they drafted. They went ahead and covered their first 2 needs, their important first 2 needs, with the first 2 picks. So no problem about that. I thought the need was more for Houston at the offensive guard position. I see Blake Fisher as a tackle. He's penciled in actually as a starting offensive tackle. Maybe one of their offensive tackles is going to move over to guard. We'll see how that goes. They obviously do need to improve their pass protection. One of the things that will help improve their pass protection is if they add better blockers at tight end and along the offensive line, plus get a running game going. Unfortunately, Jordan does not have a high grade for me. He had a very successful college season. We'll see if it works out for him. There are some flaws in his game that I wrote in my draft report, but at least they added him. Joe Mixon adds a very interesting dynamic. His yards per carry last year as a free agent wasn't up to past standards. He's slowing down a little bit. What he does bring to the table is complete ball security, and he's in the right place at the right time when blocking. He can be somewhat of a factor in the pass game. So they hope that those additions to the run game and with Blake Fisher at the offensive line will reduce sacks allowed and maybe open up the run game a little more. That remains to be seen. Caden Bullock is a fine player at safety. I rated him with a third, fourth round grade, and he was drafted in the middle of the third round. Cade Stover, I rated him in the third, fourth round pocket as well, and he was drafted appropriately in the fourth round. I like Solomon Byrd as a long shot edge rusher possibility. His grade was appropriately in the seventh round. So Houston, to their credit, they did not sit on their roster, adding all those free agents and then drafting 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 players in this draft. They knew, and a lot of teams don't know this, that you have to get better to stay the same in the NFL, especially when you're going from a fourth place schedule. Remember, Houston had a fourth place schedule last year, and now they're going to a first place schedule. Let's look at their divisional odds. Their divisional odds are basically right around plus 110. Now, it's not a strong division. We talked about Indianapolis being a whole wide range of outcomes possible. They could be 10-7. They could just as easily be 7-10, 6-11. The schedule is ramped up for everybody because we're not seeing Houston, Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee play against that NFC South division with Atlanta, Carolina, etc. So that's going to be tough enough. And luckily for Houston, the other teams in their division also didn't have killer drafts. But still, that plus 110 it's just not a good enough number for me. I don't think they should be like a 50-50 choice. We could see Indianapolis rise. We certainly could see Jacksonville with a healthy Trevor Lawrence rise again as well. So there are reasons that I do not like the plus 110. The season win total is mostly 9.5. You're seeing a lot of minus 150s, minus 160s, because this roster has gotten much better. It's Stroud in its second year, and he's surrounded by a lot of talent. So I understand them being rated as high as 9.5. The problem I have is that the schedule is ramped up. There's tape on CJ Stroud, and basically, there's actually a couple of 10s out there. We saw Caesars hang a 10, minus 130 on the under, and that's very tempting to me. And I'll tell you why as we get to my final thoughts. And the final thoughts saying, okay, most of their roster improvements were done in free agency. In terms of the draft, 2 of them are going to start. Lassiter is penciled in as a starter, which again, I think he could cover his half of the field, but his lack of speed is going to cause a problem for covering more than that. He's not going to be a complete shutdown corner. He's going to need zone principles. And Blake Fisher is going to be trial by fire as well. I don't see any surefire absolute stunners in this particular draft. So the splash is really from free agency. Point 3 is a double whammy, and I point this out because they go from a fourth place schedule to a first place schedule, and it's hard to replicate a plus 10 turnover ratio. That means free points are going to be lost. You've heard me talk about every turnover is roughly about 3.5 points of value. So if they went to a plus 0 turnover ratio, they would lose 35 points of value. That coupled with an increase in schedule. Again, increase in schedule. Let me bring this up. Baltimore is a team they will play and the rest of their division will not play. Kansas City is a team they will play and the rest of the division will not play. Dallas is a team they will play and the rest of the division will not play. That's probably 1-2, and it could be 0-3 when all is said and done. That puts them behind the 8 ball. That means they're going to have to win these divisional games. So that is cause for concern. I think they could still have a positive turnover ratio. I just don't think with the schedule that they're going to get anywhere close to that plus 10 turnover ratio. So they're going to lose some free points. Early keys, handling success, going from 0 primetime games last year to 4. They had a very repeatable schedule, a lot of Sunday games, no primetime games. Now they're going to face the ebb and flow because they're a team everybody wants to watch, and with good reason. They're going to be a fun watch, but they're going to have to handle some of the scheduling difficulties that come with going to a first place schedule. And I'd like to see them become more balanced offensively. If not, against these better teams, it puts too much pressure on CJ Stroud. Again, I applaud the fact that they didn't sit on the roster, that they went ahead and added to their roster. That's fantastic, but this is going to be a tough road to go. My strong lean would be under 10 wins when it pops up at various places. First 3 games aren't bad. Let me see if I can pull that up. First 3 games at the Colts, although the Colts have a last game, last play revenge. Then they host the Bears, improving Bears on Sunday Night Football. Then they go at Minnesota. Then they host Jacksonville. So perhaps we can see at least a 2-2 start, but after that, it gets really tough. I thank you for watching my 10-minute recap for Houston. Tomorrow, a very special guest, as you see down there on the crawl. Adam Chernoff will join me to talk all things New York Jets. You can find all my team videos on YouTube. And if you have any questions and if you want to go back as to what's covered and what I'm trying to do with this, you can refer back to the introductory video, which is part of the NFL series. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, the New York Jets with Adam Chernoff. Thanks for watching. This has been the Houston Texans 10-minute preview.